What a dream. Anyways, Andrew is here.
I'm here.
Andrew is an improviser. And as well, you co-run, right? Logan Square Improv.
Yeah.
LSI.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, with my friend Alex Perchotko, who also plays the cello, too.
Does he really?
He played in college, for our college orchestra, which is also fun, and I just thought about that, too. So a lot of cello players. He's in Indianapolis this weekend, so not here, but so I'll be kind of speaking on behalf of the theater for the both of us.
Oh, good. Yeah. Cool. Let's talk dirt about him, too.
Yeah.
So
he wouldn't care. I was like, I talked a ton of crap about you on this podcast to be like, that's fine. I don't mind at all. Yeah.
I feel like, so I got to come over there a couple times, I would say last calendar year even.
Yeah.
And perform with a team, True Bangers.
A very funny team with a lot of very funny people.
Lovely people on there.
Yeah.
And dude, your theater over there is just a delight.
Thank you.
And it's such... Going over there and performing is such a reminder of man, when you get the recipe right, it's so fun. And I think there's a lot of theaters that have different times they get the recipe right and sometimes they don't. And I feel like what you guys are doing over there is just super awesome. I have a few opinions about what I think you're doing so awesome, but talk to me a little bit about your guys' I don't know what it is that you are aiming for with your theater over there, because you have a very cool vibe.
Thank you so much. That is super kind. And
it's super true.
Yeah.
It's a great theater.
Thanks. What we're aiming to do, just to do good shows. We've always tried to keep it very simple in terms of what we're doing. We're a small community theater, so we want to just do really easily accessible shows. All the shows are free or $5. And then for us, the big thing is just putting on good shows independent of who performs on it. Because I think we don't really have a ton of house teams, and we pull to the shows from teams all over the city and our friends and people that we know. But we also on our Thursday show, which is kind of our show it was the bar show that we ran before we started the theater.
Okay. And you were running that at what bar?
Finley Dunn's, which is pretty close to here.
Finley Dunn's.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oh, okay. It's when I biked, it's on Lincoln, pretty just Lincoln and Addison kind of. Okay. So we were running that bar show there for a while, and it was just fun. We were bringing in new groups every week, and groups that we didn't really know that were new, and very seasoned veteran improvisers. And we were just kind of figuring out that if we just try to run this show as best as we can and keep the energy up and are excited about who's here, it doesn't matter, because everyone can be, as you know, as a teacher, everyone can be very good at improv very quickly too. And that was just kind of that's kind of when we started to realize this is we can make this consistently good, and we can make this fun, and then we can also just make this accessible to everybody. And that's I think what we kind of aim to do pretty much all the time is it doesn't matter who's going to show up. It doesn't matter. We're going to make it fun. We're going to try to make it the best show possible for everyone involved, and kind of always keep it different too. So that's kind of what keeps us motivated and keeps us trying to do the same thing over and over again. It's just good shows. That's all we want to do is good shows, but then also bring in more new people to it, and add variety week to week so that everyone can enjoy it.
It's definitely it's cultivating a space, right? That kind of allows people to have a more better shows.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few things that go into having the right space and the right energy that gives you a good chance of it being a fun night.
Yeah.
And especially when you have ownership over it, because it's a small theater that you co-own, you get probably a lot more intimate control of your passion going into the work, and being the thing that meets people at the door, and being the thing that kind of infects the flavor and attitude of the place. Whereas if you think about a bigger theater, it's you might have someone taking your tickets who doesn't want to be there. It's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I was super excited once to go see an ETC show. And granted, I work at Second City, and I had been working there for years, but it doesn't matter because you could easily just not know anybody there.
Yeah.
But I was super excited to go to the show, and I was a little too bubbly, I think. And then the box office person just was and I was oh man, I'm excited to see a comedy show, and my friends are in the show and I'm excited, and that person was not having it.
Yeah.
It's That's a hard thing to control for when you've got a really big theater, right?
Yeah, I think that's just where like how small we are is like a big advantage too, because that is the most fun part, I think, is because like it is so personal to like Alex and I and everyone who was kind of there as we started it, and like the show producers that we have, and just like the people who frequent the theaters. Like, I think we do have this ownership over it. It's like, this is a fun, special thing. We care a ton about it, and like I'm by nature pretty like outgoing, high energy, bubbly person as well. So like, I have no problem. Like the second somebody walks through the door, I'm like, okay, are you performing? I'm pumped you're on the show. You're going to be great. If you're an audience member, do you know what improv is? If you don't, here's what it is. Like grab a seat.
You do a
like,
pre-talk for them and tell them what improv is?
I try to. I mean, it's kind of impossible consistently to do it every show.
That's not a bad idea.
But we try. I mean, we try like, because that's, I think, a big barrier too, because we get a lot of walk-ins from our neighborhood, like in Logan Square. And like a lot of couples that come for a date night and they don't really know what's going on, but then just after like a little explanation and try to make it less like intimidating or different. So yeah, I mean, that is a big thing for me, is like, because it is like, we do have complete ownership over it. Like if it is not fun and people don't have a good time, like that's a bummer. I don't
I know,
like, there's not a, like, that would be awful. And like, there's also so many times too, like I invite my friends who don't do comedy to come see the shows, or like my family comes in from out of town to see stuff. And it's like this thing that like, I want it to be good for the people in my life that I care about, but also for anybody who brings their family to a show, or like if a couple gave up their Friday night to go on a date here and like they're giving us an hour of their time to watch us play on stage. It's like, that is a big commitment to like, like anytime you have an audience, that's a huge privilege, like to have perform for people that
really
like
is.
that don't know who you are and are just coming to watch you play on stage. So it's like, I think Alex and I, like at our core, we both feel very strongly about that, like trying to have like a lot of respect for what the show is, for all the people that came to perform and gave up their night, and just to make it as much fun every single time for people that are there. So yeah,
I feel like if it's not short form improv, we all should be doing better at explaining what people are going to see.
Yeah, really,
like take 2 minutes, right? And like explain it. We're always like, I know at like IO Theater, you're like, who hasn't seen long form improv? Okay, we're gonna make stuff up and take a suggestion. It's like that's not enough.
Yeah, I think hosting,
because it's weird the first few times you see it if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first show I saw at IO, I didn't know what was going on, and it was before I had like kind of done improv even. Like I was just newer to Chicago, and like was a little bit familiar, but not to that extent. And it's like, yeah, we all always have to remember that feeling. Anytime we're bringing someone new to this, it's like, if you're a performer and you love it, there's a reason you love it. It's because you took classes and are getting good at it. But there was a time where like you probably wouldn't have loved to sit in the audience if you felt alienated from the performers, or you felt like it was a very separate thing. But I mean, that's why I love improv too. And like in such a small space, is like, it's for everyone in the room live. Like it's for like, it's this one special moment we all get together. But I think you're so right about like hosting too. It just makes a huge difference. Like to be genuine while you're hosting, and to be like anytime I host a show, I always tell myself like, I have to love this show the most of anybody in the room. Like this, I'm presenting it, I'm hosting it, I'm making it. So like, I try not to do like a ton of bits, or I try not to ever be too self-deprecating. And I always try to be genuine and be like, I'm excited. This is gonna be fun. I want you to have fun too. And I think for improv specifically, we need that. I think like we
invite people in on like to feel like you're a group of friends all laughing together.
Yes.
Right? You mean, you said earlier, like the ability for people to like do well early on is like, you feel like people can get there pretty quickly. And as someone who's like taught a bunch of classes where people have, their first show after I think 16 weeks of training, it really is. If the audience is on your side and they feel like or if they're your family and friends, like that show can feel just as fun as a show for people who know the cast as a group of professionals. So you can kind of like bridge that gap and just be like, hey, I might not know you, but I want to welcome you in on the fun of this and make you feel included on this like silly night. Like this is this weird crap we're doing. We're trying to make this up.
Yeah.
Like the more you can convey that, the more you're going to get everybody on your team.
Yeah, I think that's so like, and I think there is something, it's a little bit different for like, we have like a short form show where you can kind of have that like host is very separate because they're continually a part of it, and they can be more jokey. Our stand-up shows the same way. We're like, it's fun to watch the host like do material up top to kind of like set the standard for that. But oh yeah, dude, that's like, I think that's so. We do this. We have like for our classes that we teach at the theater, they have their level 1. They do shows after week 7. So after week 7 and 8, they do their shows as a part of like our Thursday, like our show that we book with our friends and like other teams. So they just go first on the show as like the opening improv teams. But yeah, we just like want to bring them up. I'm like, this is their first show ever. Their first time on stage. Let's go nuts for them. And then the audience is hot and they're excited. And then fun. Like having the class confident and be like, you can do this right now and you can be very good at it. And they take the stage with a lot of energy. They're doing like very good, genuine long form improv. Like, and it's just like, to me, watching that after being a part of that process from like the very beginning of the first time somebody shows up to a class, teaching them what a scene is, then watching them on stage in a show in front of a live audience in such a short time. I'm like, yeah, we can, if you believe in this, it happens very quickly, which is exciting.
Probably because, I mean, I would say the biggest difference between, you know, like a new improviser and like a very experienced improviser, the biggest difference is probably just confidence, right? Like confidence in the choices that you're making and like owning them and feeling comfortable and confident enough to play the way you want to play. And so the quicker you can get people feeling comfortable or confident, the more likely they're going to have a show that they're happy about. Yeah. And that's good. But also then I guess that's the thing we develop, right? As like the longer we do this is like, how do I still do well when everything is stacked against me to not feel good and confident? Yeah. Which is like
that is fun when you're on shows where you're like, this is going poorly, or like the audience is not about what we're doing, or like, and that is fun when you have the confidence not to go out and just hope for the best, but you're like, okay, I'm gonna make choices that I know will either disrupt the show in a way that could work, or I know that like if we go hard and like loud and just like bring it as like genuinely as we can, people get back on our side. But yeah, confidence, I think for sure is the thing that grows the most.
Yeah, definitely. Like, because I mean, man, the worst thing in the world. Chug that beer. Chug it. You have to play catch up with me. I'm like far ahead of you already.
I know. I keep talking too much. So.
I also like, oh man, if I drink like one beer, I already won't be making sense. I don't let myself. Do you let yourself drink before you perform?
No.
I don't either.
I don't. And that's like
I'll always be worse.
I'm thankful for Alex. Actually, told me he started comedy a little bit before I did, and he like one of my first shows ever. He's like, you're gonna see a lot of people that drink when they do stuff. He's like, just don't do it. And I mean, I think he said it offhandedly. And I like every like once in a while, if like I'll have a beer before a show, if that's what calls for it. But I never want it to be a crutch of having like 1 or 2 beers and being loose, and then like feeling like, oh, if I am a little bit looser, I'm more fun, and then like that dependency. So I always try to not.
Never helps me. Like I feel like I could have 1 beer and be like, oh, shit, why did I do that? Never felt it was an advantage. Yeah, I don't know why. Oh god, I was gonna tell you something. I forget. So you know, you're teaching classes over there. You and Alex both. You know, kind of getting to do your own thing. I mean, you create your own vibe in the theater, but also kind of create your own curriculum. Do you have any sort of like strong outlooks already? As someone, like, how long have you been teaching now?
I've been teaching for just over a year.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, it was fun. Like we got, and that wasn't even one of our intentions when we started the theater too. It's kind of grew organically. So we had a lot of people from the neighborhood that were asking about classes, and they were like, oh, awesome. All right, cool, let's do it. And then it's the class program's steadily grown, and obviously on a big hiatus right now. But we
why is that?
Yeah.
Are you guys feeling like you can come back?
Yeah,
that's good.
We have a lot of patrons for the theater that continue to subscribe and donate, which is like beyond generous, and is awesome. And yeah, so we're excited. Eventually, whenever things are safe, we'll open back up.
That's good.
But as far as teaching, yeah, because we were designing the curriculum from the first class, and at first we were like, okay, let's just do like one class. Like, how can we best encompass like everything we need to teach to get people ready for a class show? And from the beginning, that's like, we're lucky because we have the classes in the theater, so we turn on the stage lights. We kind of get them used to the room. Yeah. Talk about just like how to take the stage with confidence. And then as far as scene work right away, when I teach scenes, it's just like, all right, it's you and a scene partner on stage. You need to work together to create something awesome. So like the quicker that you can be excited about your scene partner.
So good luck.
On their idea, yeah. And like be agreeable and excited to be there. Like you will find success more often than not. So I try to teach a lot of like matching, mirroring, teamwork, we statements, and like as I just like for level 1, I'm just like, yeah, just whatever the first person says, be crazy excited about it, go and like have fun. And then I also like stress editing too, because I think that's the big thing when you start doing shows is like that can be a bad show or a good show. It's like a bad scene that's 30 seconds with a quick edit and then like someone else jumping out there is great, but like a bad scene that's 4 minutes and the team's hesitant and scared, like that's a bad show. So we just try to analyze like, okay, what are the elements that like hit the highest? And it's like, okay, 2 people jumping out, we statement, excited, on the same team, building ideas, quick scene, that is going to be successful almost every single time.
Yeah. I would say that that's that element too that makes people like feel like improv is something like more than just silliness, is the ability to kind of like, as you put it, like the we statements or like the collaboration of it all, of like, it's a little bit of a feeling of like, I'm going into battle.
Yeah.
And I'm relying entirely on you. And like that collaborative spirit is just so fun.
Yeah. I think that's for me the most fun too. That's like distilling a lot of, I've had incredible teachers in Chicago, and I feel like that to me is always the most fun, is just being excited about who you're on stage with. And then like, I don't know, it's cool. I mean, I think like Dana Kirsioli was probably like a very influential teacher, where she's like, your scene partner is like the most important person with you on stage at all times. And I feel like that's said by a lot of different teachers.
Where does Dana teach? I don't know Dana.
I had her at the Chicago Improv Den, which is like Dina Faglis's program. Yeah. So I got to have her as a teacher, and I feel like she just stressed that harder than a lot of teachers I'd had. And like that simple principle, I think, it just is the biggest truth. And I forget it as a performer on stage all the time, but it's very easy to see it, especially in beginning improvisers. If like, because you said confidence too. It's like, if that first line, that's the only thing that matters. Support them, just go back and forth, have fun, build up a bunch of energy, and then somebody edit, and let's keep it going. So
yeah, the last thing that any audience ever wants to feel is you as a performer being like, is this okay?
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, no, it's not, because you asked.
Right.
But if you didn't ask, it would have been okay.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And then, yeah, like what's your experience with teaching? How do you feel about like when you're teaching like the initial concept of scene work, or what principles do you find to be the most important to like share with people?
Man, it is like creating, it's like so much of it's like table setting, right? Of creating that environment where like people can have fun and like mess up and be okay with like messing up, and like taking away the importance of like getting it correctly. Man, I would say that like teamwork and like ensemble work is like one of the more satisfying things to teach. And I guess character work for me as well. I guess both of them like play on that fact of just like needing to like trust your choices and like, and just play and have fun. I was going to say this, it's also very interesting when like you get someone in a class and they can't meet you at that minimum prerequisite of like, I'm okay looking silly and having fun. And it's like, they should never be in a class. Like never. Like it's a bare minimum you need to come in and collaborate with others.
Yeah.
Because the moment like you bring that energy of like, I don't want to look silly, and and it's someone, I'm talking about someone who's never going to cross that hurdle. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which I've had only a couple times. Or people who don't want to be in a class, like somebody else signed them up.
Oh,
or like,
yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. It's such a prereq to like being in the room is like
wanting to be there and wanting
to look silly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very fortunate. I don't know if I've encountered somebody who was like not about being there at all, or how that would go. So
it's only happened a handful of times.
Okay.
And oh boy, man, the one time it happened with an adult, this was somebody who should have just been pursuing stand-up. No offense to stand-up, you know what I mean? It's just like that's what they wanted improv to be. They wanted it to be them like doing their joke and shining, and like they couldn't hardly like if a game got silly, they would almost like start to move themselves out of like a circle, like a warm-up game. They would like purposely not sit by people.
Oh yeah.
Like very confrontational characters.
Yeah.
And it was like, as much as you did to be like, hey man, like it's okay. It's like just like whatever. It's like he was ruining it. And the class was trying to take care of them, but they're also new improvisers. He was just ruining it for everyone.
That's tricky.
And I guess the only other times I experienced that sort of thing is like, you know, if you're teaching a workshop,
yeah,
or like it might be for, especially if it's for kids, right? If you're teaching a workshop for a bunch of kids who don't want to be there, it's like, don't even do it. Don't do it. This is literally pointless. Even if you have 5 kids who don't want to be there, they will ruin it for the 75 other kids there.
Yeah, because
like they will try their hardest to ruin it.
I feel like with adults too, like if you notice somebody maybe is like very not about it, we're adults, it's like, I mean, that guy's probably here for some reason that's outside of his control. He's going through stuff. For kids, you're so like malleable to be like, all right, is that what the cool kid in the class is doing? I guess we don't care anymore, and it's whatever. So yeah, man, that's such a bummer about like having people that like are intentionally disruptive to the class.
Doesn't happen too often.
That's good.
But I would say like those giant workshops for like schools.
Yeah.
Or and here's the thing is, if you have it at the adult level, because like you're going to someone's like work and they're teaching it, most everyone knows not to be at least an asshole. Right. You know what I mean? Or like Sharon doesn't want to get silly, you know, whatever. But like they're not usually like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
This is stupid. Like, you know what I mean?
That would be really interesting, because I feel like in the moment I would feel so inspired to be like, all right, I can change them. Like I can be the one guy that like has that like movie moment where I look in their eyes and I was like, yes, and then it clicks, and then like they're like Scrooge breaking point where they're nice to everybody afterwards. But yeah, actually, in like being practical, they'd probably be like, "No, man, get out of here." I'd be like, "All right, yeah, sorry, I won't do that again."
When I first started teaching, like I had in my head this like feeling of like I was gonna be Robin Williams, and it's gonna be like Dead Poet Society. And like I was gonna like be walking through the park and be like, anything could be anything. And it's like, you know, people come with so many different like anxieties and fears, and like, oh, I'm not ready to be goofy yet, and it's like, okay, all right, well, I guess we'll play Zip Zap Zop.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be such a great like teacher too, because you're so warm on first impressions. Like right away, I feel like you're very much excited to be with the person that you're around, and you're very kind. I feel like that.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like I mean, I feel like our first impression of each other was good. That's why we're friends, you know. Like, But I think that is so important too, to be like, when you are teaching too, just to be so all in. Like, and that's another thing that I feel like I'm so ready to look so stupid. I'm ready to lose any argument with any student. All I want to do is for the people that want to be there, like, make it the most fun experience too. And yeah, even like, I don't know. It's just like, it's for people that also want to take an improv class as an adult. I think that is such a huge step, that especially if you don't come from a performance background, or you're not the most confident person, or you have something that you're like, I don't necessarily want to be in front of people, and like you take a risk and take that class. Like that to me is so exciting, because those people, I'm like, I want you to be a rock star on stage. I want you to feel so confident, know you can crush it in front of a crowd. And I feel like making sure that if you're an introductory teacher, that you are as warm and like encouraging as possible is so key.
Yeah. You do have to set the environment correctly for people are scared as fuck.
Yeah.
I like will try to even avoid sometimes walking into a room before I have to start the class on the first day, because like the tension in there, it's like, I'm like, hey, we're gonna get started in just a second. Yeah. But until then, everyone's gonna be real tense.
That's how, because every first day of an improv class is awkward, and there becomes this weird thing. Like even if you like are in like level 4 or 5 of a program, and you're with people, and you maybe even know some people just kind of sit in the chair in the back of the room, go on their phones, and are like so disengaged. So that's what I try to do the first day of our class. Like I'm playing like music in the theater, trying to get people pumped up. I was like, let's all stand in a circle, and kind of like already probably making people uncomfortable, but I was like, this is better than us kind of like isolating, putting up our guard a little bit when we start. But yeah, it's so cool to also like rethink all these elements too, of like, how can you make this like, that's what's fun about improv, because nothing is permanent about it, is anytime you go through like an experience that wasn't ideal, being like, all right, cool. How can I change this for the next group of people I interact with as a teacher, as a performer, as a student, to be like, this could be better. It's the coolest art form because of that.
You get that same challenge that you get as a performer, where like you also it's easy to like lean into the things work.
Yeah.
And like that is something I have to like remind myself, and I don't think I do well enough with it. Like it's easy for me to go, I know this exercise works. I'm going to hit this exercise again and when I teach this level again. But there's so much out there that's like works, and like there's so many different ways to like teach and expand people's ability to be creative and improvise. But it's like once you find something that works, it's so easy to be like safe with that. And
yeah.
So same thing with performing, right? Like I'm like always a nice dad.
Yeah.
Or like someone who happens to speak German or have a German accent. Or like
if I play a boyfriend that just got broken up with and is like a sad sack like that.
Ooh, is that your thing?
Yeah. I feel like I play like low status, vulnerable characters.
Oh, yeah.
Probably too much.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is very fun. I feel like early on in improv, I learned right away. I was like, okay, so the guy, like if you're super mean, that doesn't work. Like that principle just became very clear in class right away. I was like, all right, cool. So I'm going to just try to always lose or like be kind and somewhere in between there, which like obviously we should always all kind of be doing everything. So we're not stuck on these same things, but that's where I tend to go a lot. It's just kind of sad and a little bit slower.
I think for me personally as a performer, like at some point I figured out the right way to be mean. And the right way to be mean is just be sarcastic.
Yeah.
Like if you're angry, because what it does is it helps you move the scene forward, right? So if like you're in a scene, you're like, oh, it's my turn to go pick up the kids from school. Oh, fuck yeah. I would love to do it again. I would love to pick up our kids. Can I get anything for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, just that super selfish, arrogant. Like, that's what's so fun. That's such a nuanced, smart way to play it, too, where you're not, like, directing that anger, like, with a ton of, like, negative energy at the person, but being, like, building it up for yourself. That's very cool.
It's the hardest thing about, like, I think when you say, like, playing a mean character is because of the stalemate situation you'll find yourself in.
Yeah.
And so if you're still willing to like go along with it and like whether it's like through like the lens of sarcasm or just like passive aggressive, like it's so much easier to move the scene forward than like a character who's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. What do you think is going to happen, Andrew, in this next year to 2 years to 5 years? What are we looking at here in Chicago? Like this landscape. I have a friend who's an acting teacher and does a bunch of like on camera and like does a bunch of commercials. And he said like, oh man, like the fact that the improv scene is potentially dying or leaving here will probably even affect why like people come here to film and like shoot commercials.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's interesting to think about. I'm pretty bad to talk about on that end. I have never acted in a commercial. I don't have an agent. I have no acting credentials to my name. Like just strictly, I took a lot of improv classes and just got really into this one thing. But I am optimistic for a couple of reasons. Like I think what will be cool is because there were a couple like huge theaters, which like that is awesome because it's cool to build a community around like one specific place where you can frequently visit and then you see faces more often than like, people. And I think that is cool. But also like, I'm very excited for the amount of like bar prov that will happen and the amount of small black box theaters that'll pop up around the city. Like there's so many neighborhoods that now, like if you live in a place that's not necessarily like Lincoln Park or Lakeview and you want to be like, I want to start a theater here. Now is a great, well, not now, but once
very
it's
soon.
safe, it'll be a great time to do that. And then to have more people taking ownership of like, oh, like we're all capable of doing this and we can run a free show in a bar with our friends if we just buy 2 can lights, bring a PA system and get a microphone and then just start doing it. We can make that very fun. And then letting those things grow and letting like new things happen, I think is very exciting because there's also like, I don't know, there was a lot of negativity associated with a lot of places for a ton of reasons. And I mean, I'm in the scope of how long Chicago improv has existed, very young. So I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but I am excited to be like a proponent of someone who doesn't have a background in theater management, but we're like, all right, let's just do it. And then like getting people excited you can take full ownership of what you want to do with this and get people excited about it and make your own space wherever you want it to be. So that part I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. I like that. I like that optimism.
Yeah.
I also think that, like, honestly, at the end of the day, especially if it's a theater that's specifically for improv, the more intimate and the right level of less polished it is, the better it sets the expectations for what you're going to see. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Second City doing sketch, to me, in like those big theaters, like, isn't subject to those same rules. Like, they've got a name, they've got those big theaters, and it's sketch, right? But when it's improv, and when it like IO scaled up, and like I guess UCB, and I hadn't been to any of those like new buildings, they scaled up and they started like polishing it all a little bit more and making it like these theaters like higher occupancy. It almost doesn't jive with what you're about to get.
Yeah.
You need this like underground feeling of like we're all in this room together and like we're gonna make this shit up, even if it's people who are really great at it, to kind of like set the tone for what everyone else should be expecting in the room.
Yeah, I think that is 100% true. I feel very.
Which
much
you guys,
the same
that's
way.
what you guys have over there is like, oh, we got to put out more chairs.
Yeah.
Just like push some more chairs in there. Like someone's got to go to the bathroom and they have to crawl over other people and like.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. I mean, when we started producing our first show, it was in the back of a bar. It was like past the bathrooms at the end of the hallway, and it was a super small room. We were like kind of figuring it out as we went. There was no stage. You just played on the floor, like 5 feet from people, just a really intimate space. But we'd get that place packed, and the energy was crazy, and it felt awesome, even though it was kind of like dirty. And then our first space before the current one that we're at was an even smaller room, and it kind of the same energy. It was one shared restroom with a restaurant next to the stage. There was a big vent on the stage. The occupancy of that room was even smaller than our current place, but it would just get crazy loud and hot and sweaty, and like we had trouble controlling the temperature of the room, and that was also fun. And like that imperfect aspect of it was my favorite part too. And people are down, especially like if you're going to see a comedy show, you're paying $5. You want to keep expectations low and like just kind of like create an environment when people feel like they're sneaking into something kind of bad or dirty or like gritty. I don't know.
Yeah, what
like,
is this nasty place?
Yeah, maybe not bad or dirty, but I fully agree too.
You have to control for the right elements, right? Like I remember doing. Like when I first moved here, there was far less opportunities about 10 or 11 years ago. And like a lot more people were doing bar prov for that reason, because you couldn't just like immediately jump up on stage somewhere. And some of those shows, like they're like, well, we're not going to turn off the football game and we're going to keep the volume on. We're like, well, I guess we're not going to do a show here anymore.
Yeah.
Like there's some elements that have to get controlled for, right? But then there's like, there's like a certain level of grunge and like intimacy that's like, oh yeah, this is what it needs to be.
Yeah. Dealing with other bar patrons is tough in bar prov. I've done some shows like that where the space isn't
and they don't want you there.
Yeah.
They're like, fuck, who are these people?
Yeah. We were lucky with our bar show that it was like separate from the bar and restaurant, and every once in a while some guy would walk into the bathroom and see there's a comedy show and stick around for like a drink or two. But I think you need to keep like the energy focused towards the stage. That's part of the reason why we like a lot of times with the chairs at the theater, we'll only bring out like a small amount at the beginning in case there's a smaller crowd. Just be like, all right, well then we're just going to keep it close to the stage, and as it fills up, we'll bring it out. And I like that. Like there's elements of that room that I really enjoy, and that feeling of like, yeah, you're seeing the full production happen right now. Like you can look around, there's no mystery behind the curtain of like, we're all people trying to make a fun experience for each other in this moment. But yeah, I think like some like sound control, a good like lighting the performers well and making sure that like they can safely access the stage and like safely perform on stage, and then making sure the audience has like comfortable enough seating but are like close together and like excited and not so comfortable that they're in control of the room as far as like their posture, or like that they can like be having so much more fun with their other friends that they can lose focus on what's in front of them. So
Yeah.
it was fun. It was really fun when we started producing the show in the bar. We learned a lot of that stuff on the fly. It was just watching, and then after the show, we'd be breaking down the room and pulling up the lights and be like, all right, what worked, what didn't work. Like, was the music too loud? Were we pulling lights too soon? Were the chairs too close to the performers? Were people too hot? Were they too cold? Were they enjoying themselves? Was it too long? Like, was the running order good? I mean, it's simple, but there's also enough elements that like you have to at least think through at some point and be like, because if you miss one of those things, like you let performers go on way too long, the show starts to drag. Like that extra 45 minutes on a show all of a sudden like made it unbearably long, and people lost interest and had a bad experience. So like it's very simple, but there's just a lot of little elements that like to try to take control over. Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, maybe like, you know, as like performers and teachers and people who have like spent an enormous amount of time getting pretty decent at making stuff up and making it fun for people, is like, yeah, it is really simple, but we also kind of forget all the little experiential know-hows we've gained of like, oh yeah, that show was rough because of this one small thing. And like there is probably a value that we undercut in ourselves about like, yeah, all of it matters.
Yeah.
It really does. It's like, it's fun, it's light, and we're gonna just make it up. But also our brains are like, here's a situation, this is how I'm handling it. I'm gonna like move this chess piece because someone in the back is being a little more drunk, or like the room's too hot and people don't want to laugh, or the last person said something and everyone else is uncomfortable and scared right now. My first TJ and Dave show I ever went and saw was like, you know, like people are like, oh yeah, TJ Dave, you got to see them, it's so exciting. So it was downstairs at the old IO. Dave came out, and then I believe her name is I'm gonna get it wrong, it's like Sue Gillen, I forget her name.
Okay.
An excellent performer, but I forget exactly her last name, was a guest because TJ was out of town. And I heard somebody at the front like must have done something like, oh, like TJ's not here or something like that. You know, I don't know what they said, I didn't hear it, but Dave Pasquesi is like, shut your fucking mouth. And they just like walked out on stage. And then like everyone's like, oh, Dave could be, I think, a little bit of an intimidating guy too. Like he's got a powerful energy. He's tall, right? Yeah. You know, and he's like, again, he's like, I said, shut your fucking mouth. And everyone was so like tense. And then like, with TJ and Dave, at least they used to like drop the lights and then it would come back up and they would be in character, no suggestion, right? And the first thing he said in character was like, oh, well, that was uncomfortable or awkward. And like immediately it cut through all that tension. But I was like, how are people going to laugh right now? Like when I saw that moment, and it was the acknowledgement of how awkward that was. Not like pushing it under the rug and embracing it and then incorporating it into a scene right away was just like the perfect level of like breaking the tension, which is like, man, like being able to handle those moments, right? Because they come in so many different ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it could be like the bachelorette party with like everyone's got their penis straw and they think the whole show is for them, and like that's what's also funny too, like the crowd control and stuff. Like we are so fortunate that like we have a really great audience that comes to our shows, and a lot of people, like it's usually like couples with a six-pack that are just like super laid back, and every once in a while we get like a rowdy crowd or like a really drunk couple. And it's been so weird too, to like I have no experience as being a bouncer for a club, and not that like you know you need that background, but it is weird to like during shows like creep up to somebody and be like, hey sir, can you please be quiet, like there's a show going on, and being like, God, I hope he is receptive to this message that I'm presenting to him, because if he's not, I'm not equipped to do more than like whatever the next steps are in this conversation. Which is like that's the thing, is like I feel like a lot of us are like, oh man, it would be cool to start a theater, but it's like, whoa, wait, you got to do it all, baby. You got to like do the admin work, you got to like, there's so much like bullshit that you're gonna have to deal with that's not just going making silly jokes. It's like we all shouldn't be starting theaters. We
Yeah.
truly shouldn't.
I think definitely
It takes the right skill set.
Yeah,
At least some of them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to start a theater, my advice would be start a free bar show for a long time first.
Test the waters.
Like learn by mistake, get your skill set up. And obviously we're not experts. We're learning on the go as we do this continually. But that was a lot of start producing shows and then like, start picking up some of those elements. Cause there's a ton of stuff that like I love doing, like back end stuff that's less like in the moment show things that are very fun and very interesting and like very cool things when people like donate awesome things or just send these really kind messages of support or like, I feel like we have been infinitely blessed with just people being awesome to start this process. But yeah, there's like incidents that you deal with behind the scenes that people don't see. And like that part's not fun. And like, that part is not cool. And like, so yeah, I would say, there's stuff that's not, there's not, trying to put this like as tactfully as possible. Like
don't just say how you actually need to say it.
I would say like, there's just a lot of stuff behind the scenes too. So like trying to think about those elements too. And, I think that's also I think it's cool too. Like it's a lot of stuff I've never thought about before we kind of jumped in and started doing it too. And I've learned as I've grown. And then like it also, it continues. I think the biggest thing is it continues to give me respect for like the big picture. Like when I'm producing a show, every performer in there is like, I want you to do the best you've ever done in this moment. Like I couldn't tell you how hard I'm rooting for you because if everybody does well in a show, we all win. Like the audience has a great night. You feel good about yourself. The show went well. So like, I'm happy. Like, and like, so just kind of rooting for everybody all the time to do well is something that like I did before, but like I actively do now. And I think that's really cool.
That's cool. You have more of a stake in everyone's success.
Yeah.
I think it's, it's easy to like go somewhere else and be like, oh, I want to be like the best team of the night. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, or perform and be like, oh, this cast, I want to get more laughs. That's our human nature, right? And we're like always are trying to correct for that. I'm like, no, it's team. But when you're like running the theater and like truly when everyone wins, you win, the theater wins, like that's the right mindset to be in.
Yeah, that's what's so funny. And like, I know that is and like, obviously we've all had those moments as performers that like, you want to have like the best show at certain points. But yeah, like I think that's what is so funny is like there's an infinite amount of laughter that can happen. Like, this whole show can be awesome. Like everyone could crush, and like whoever you brought to the show,
don't work on the scarcity model of laughter. Yeah,
like there's no like limited supply of like success that can happen here. It's all free and it's for everybody. So like
that's so good.
Having that mindset is fun too, because like a lot of the shows that like a student show where I'm like hosting the show, worried about their first show, like taking notes, thinking about these other elements. By the time I take the stage at the end, I'm like, oh, I'm just so excited to be here. The show's going great. I'm having fun. Like, let's be loose. Excuse me. Versus like thinking about myself as much in that moment, which is cool. And that's just something that like I've been very fortunate with like the journey I've gotten to have. But
you've already kind of like spoken to this, and maybe there's like not a lot left to say in a way, because you've already like the spirit of like your theater and like what you want is like, okay, cool, that's awesome. But I've always watched theaters, especially the smaller theaters, have a kind of a battle with the vibe of creating a clique, right? I feel like that might be a challenge that's more unique to small theaters than it is to big theaters, oddly enough. Because the people who are saying no to you that you can't perform or you can perform or you are included or like, hey, come join us, are people in bigger theaters sometimes that aren't as personally involved, right? I had somebody in Amsterdam that I was talking to, I was teaching a workshop there, and he has like a small theater. And he was like, you know what, Jonny, he's originally from the US. He's like, actually, the fact that there's theaters telling people no makes the improv scene a more friendly environment in Chicago and potentially New York, wherever, than here in Amsterdam, where every opportunity is predicated on like, who do you know? Who are you friends with? who are you on good terms with? And so I've noticed that, like, even maybe unintentionally, it's easy to feel excluded in these theaters sometimes, and I don't get the slightest whiff of that from you guys. But if you could, like, maybe talk a little bit about like that mindset, because I think that's so important. Is like, and you've already spoken to it, but like, how do we make everyone feel like, hey, let's come play, but also keep the quality of what you're doing, and like, yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not perfect at any of that stuff, but I think that is something that is important to us too. Is like I feel very strongly, especially with like the teaching the classes and getting people going right away, and just seeing the growth quickly. And like, I mean, I just believe that from like my journey thus far, like that, like, yeah, everyone can be very good. There's enough space for like every single person to be doing this well.
I like that there's enough laughter to go around.
There's enough laughter to go around. Yeah. There's enough like back rooms and bars. There's enough spaces where like truly like mic, PA system, some lights, like you can get it going and you can make your own experience with this. But yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky in the fact that like, at least for like Alex and I, it's like, I don't judge the talent that comes in the sense of like, I'm not ever actively directing or giving people like telling anybody what to do. He's not either. We're not recruiting people and saying, we have this audition process, you made this house team. A lot of times what we're trying to do is like just consistently put out good shows. So for us, it's like booking it in the sense of like, okay, well, I know this team, this is someone I performed with a ton, they're great, we'll book them. This might be a newer team, I don't know these people, but like, let's throw them on here too. We'll put them earlier in the show. Like, I haven't seen this person in forever. Like, I haven't seen, like, I don't know, they're like not on a house team in their theater, so like, let's bring them in. Or like, this house team's awesome at this theater, let's bring them over here. And like, that's something that we have tried to push ourselves with. And I think it's been very easy because of how small we were when we started, and also because of the success of a lot of other theaters, that it's very easy to enter that space and then be like, we're just an additional show going on. So like, if it fits in your schedule, we'd love to have you. We'll put it all together. You can perform. But I think that's a really like active challenge that like, especially if we continue to grow, like we'll face, and something that I would like to stay out of as far as like drama and politics.
And it's a fine line. And I feel like no matter how well you do, there's always going to be, you know, what people, some level of jealousy, some level of like, I wanted this thing and I'm not doing this thing. And it's a hard thing, I think, to control for. And I don't think it's every theater's responsibility to control for that perfectly, because it's in many ways is out of your control. But it's definitely cool to see that that's like actively a thing, that like that warmth and that invitation of like, which is really the spirit we all need to have, especially the longer we do this work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like recognizing too, if you're in a position where people perceive that like you're deeper into the world, or you're like, you know, if you're like an improviser and you've been here for like 10 years or whatever, and like the amount of like nerves for someone to come up to you who's like new to it is a very real thing. And like just being cognizant of like always trying to break down that barrier of like, oh no. Yeah, we're all gonna play like that. This is an illusion. You know what I mean? I still have that with certain people. There's certain people that I know they know who I am, and like maybe we're here like a decade before me, maybe only a couple of years, and I'm just like, I don't really talk to that person. They do their own thing, and it's like, that's so silly. Yeah, it's so silly.
I remember when I first moved here, I was taking classes at Second City, and I would go watch the third act of the main stage, and Paul Jurewicz was a performer on the
delightful performer.
So funny. And after a show, he was in 1959 by himself, like drinking a beer. And I just like went up to him and I was like, hey, I'm taking a class here. Like, that was so funny. And just like, he was so nice to me. And he's like, what's your name? Where are you from? Yeah. We were chatting. And then like later on, he was like my conservatory sub. And then like now it's like, I've seen him on like TV. And like, that is kind of something that I would always hope to be. And as far as like, I think you touched on it a little bit too, but like there's also, I think there's a weird thing of like people like in positions of power hold the ability for like performers to move to the next level, whether that be like roles or teams or and I feel very fortunate, and I want to stay away from that side of things. Like I don't have any connections to any person in the industry at all.
Yeah.
And that makes it really nice. But yeah, always keeping that attitude too of like, we should always be inviting more people to do this, because the more that people know about improv, the better everyone is, the more receptive they are to it. We all win. Like it is such a community thing.
Well said. So once everything comes back together, you guys plan to be back in that same space?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, so we'll still be there. You know, I don't know when that will be. I think I have
5 people scattered throughout the theater.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a little tricky too, because I think we want to make sure it's fun when we come back.
Yeah, there's a critical mass needed, right, to like make it feel like it's fun.
It's such a specific experience too, so it's just trying to bring it back and make sure that it's like fun when it comes back for people. But I'm excited for it. Like I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be trying my best to make it a fun thing, and so
Andrew, you're the best dude, and you are like quintessentially the exact like sort of person we need, like running theaters and like creating the right vibe at theaters and energy. And it's such a delight, dude. It's such a delight to sit and chat with you, and
this is fun.
Hopefully be back at your theater. Honestly, the most fun theater in Chicago.
That's
just the most fun. Just the most fun. Like, you got something going on.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for when we can come back. And if anybody wants to start a theater, talk to me. Let's get it going. I've got advice to give and that. And hopefully we'll just keep having fun shows and have you on more shows when we come back. And this was very fun and a very fun start to the weekend. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, hell yeah. What's the plans for the weekend?
This weekend is nothing. I was in Kansas City. My little brother just moved there, actually. So
are you a Kansas improviser?
No. So he just moved there, actually. So I was kind of going out to like help him move in and settle down and stuff.
Whoa, dumb question. Is Kansas City actually in Kansas?
It's Missouri and Kansas. It's both. Okay. Yeah.
I thought I had that partially wrong. I was like, wait, Kansas City's not just... Is it halfway in each?
I think there's... Kansas City, Missouri? I don't know if it's half and half or it's 2 Kansas cities, but it's a little tricky.
I don't know. Are they... Is Missouri and Kansas next to each other?
Yes. Yeah. It's... Kansas is west of Missouri.
There's a space that just like blanks out in my mind as you start to go west, and then kind of comes back together as you get towards the coast.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, every time I look at a map, I'm a little more surprised than I should be.
No, I'm the same way. Like if it goes far west or far east, I'm from Indiana. So like I know like this part of the Midwest, but as we just discovered, I was like pretty slow to answer that Missouri Kansas question, because
you could have told me anything. Really I would have been like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
I feel like I had a lot of friends when I first moved here who were real freaking funny and from Kansas. And I don't know if it's just something about growing up with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And just entertaining yourself, if that was the right recipe for some people.
I think that's a lot of the Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being like, all right, it's me and my friends in our parents' basement on the weekend, like playing video games and then just like making each other laugh. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. What a treat to have you.
Very fun.
Oh, hey, anything you want to plug before we turn it off? Anything coming up? Any way we could support LSI? Is there like a Patreon still up and running if we want to jump on that? And
yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. We have a Patreon. If you go to logansquareimprov.com, we try to keep that updated. Obviously, there's nothing super new right now, but we have a Patreon. If you'd like to support that right now, that'd be awesome. We're filming some online stuff and going to try to release it in the next few months. So we'll see how that goes, just to try to create some stuff, because it seems like it'll be a while before we can get people back in the space.
Yeah. Good for you guys.
Check out our website. But that's pretty much it.
Well, what's the website?
logansquareimprov.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool,
buddy.
Thanks, Johnny.
And I'm pretending to turn it off right now.
Cool.
And what did you want to tell me that you didn't tell me?
Okay, crazy like conspiracy theory.
Let me tell you this fucking bullshit. Sharna punched me in the mouth one time. That's why I created my own theater.
Yeah.
She punched me in the mouth.
Dance in the middle of the night. Come on, dance.